The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Jet Reports. Da, da, da. Let's see if I could turn on my webcam. Not that I look that great and that you want to see, but at least you'll know who you're talking to. Hi, everybody. I'm Belinda Allen, and we're going to talk about Jet Reports today. This is an introductory webinar for GP users. So let's go ahead and get it going. A little bit about me, so you'll know whether or not I am someone who is qualified to talk to you about Jet Reports. Let's go ahead and, sorry, I was already on the wrong slide. Not a good way to start. I've been in the GP community for over 27 years, so I've been around a long time. I go back to DOS days. I'm a Microsoft MVP. For 6 years, I was one for GP, and now I am a Power BI MVP. I'm a GPUG All-Star. One of you voted for me. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I've co-authored 2 books with fellow MVP Mark Polino on GP and business intelligence. I actually love reporting, and I love doing anything that's going to help our customers and partners get ahead. If you're not familiar with Ingevity, we are a GP partner, and we are a cloud provider. We're actually a Microsoft cloud service provider. So we work with a lot of partners customers, and then our customers directly. So if you fall into one of those categories, thank you so much. If you don't, well, welcome anyhow. We're glad to have you. I am so delighted that joining me today on the call is my fellow teammate who is just brilliant. Kara is on the call with us today, and she's going to chip in. She's been doing some implementations on Jet. Hi, Kara.
Hi, Belinda. How are you?
Good. I'm not making her get on a webcam because it's not any fun being on the webcam. But I know from fact, if you could see who's talking to you, that it's easier to pay attention and stay focused. So Kara's going to enlighten us in some of her experiences on implementing Jet Reports. So we're super happy. And as I told her before the call, I'm going to tell her again, Kara, if you hear anything and you have something you want to add, just interrupt me. You know, I could talk nonstop for days. You've known me long enough to know that. So you just have to say, Belinda, shut up.
Perfect.
We at Ingevity put our mission statement right up front, and we talk about it at every single meeting, and we try to live by it. So I like to start every webinar with our mission statement. It's to improve the life and success of our partners and customers by providing exceptional business application experiences that simplify, inform, and delight. And today is all about informing. And we're hoping to demystify Jet a little bit, which will simplify it, and I've no doubt you'll be delighted before we get done. I am not going to harass you endlessly with poll questions, but I only have 4 for the whole thing, and I do want to start with the first 2. And this is just so I can edit how I present and what I talk about. If you would do me a favor and answer the poll question you see on the screen. Do you currently use Jet Report? So we've got yes, no, I've played with it some, I've tried it, but I'm not using it. And great. All right. Good. Okay, so the biggest majority of you are saying no. And then it's, I've played with it some. So yay! For those others, I hope I give you some little glean of insight there. And now let me ask my next poll question. And this is for the small group of you who are using it. It was a really small group. If you know the answer, would you be willing to say, are you using the professional version, which is the paid version? And if you're using the free version, then just go ahead and say no. Okay, and we're going to be talking mostly about the free version. And I'm going to show you a little bit about the paid version. But if you're using the paid version, and I see some of you are, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Thank you so much. Don't worry about it because it's the same version. The paid version just adds additional features. And I want to show all of you what those features are, what some of those additional features are, so that you could decide if there's return on investment. So let's go through our agenda for today. we have a really small agenda, but I could talk about these items for a day without even pausing for breath. We're going to talk about what JET is. We're going to go through, obviously, a demo of it. We're going to talk about what does it cost and how can it benefit you. And the last one is where we really hope to pick Kara's brains and get a little more insight on that. So let's start with what JET is. And I'm going to use JET's explanation. And their explanation is flexible BI and reporting solution inside of Excel. So what does that mean inside of Excel? It means that it's an Excel add-on. So you install it locally on your GP or on your Excel. It'll pop up as a menu option on your Excel and it'll have its own ribbon. JET will then, there's a place where you could go in and you tell it where your data is and what your data names are and what your user credentials are, and it'll know how to do all of the integrations to your GP. So then you don't have to worry about anything. You can get to everything inside your GP SQL Server database. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, you're probably thinking, okay, this is for financial statements, right? Just financial statements. Wrong. You could do all kinds of operational reporting in JET as well. So it's a full A to Z scenario for reporting, which is pretty cool. So you also might be thinking, well, you know what? I'm thinking about going to the cloud, and this is only good for on-premise data, right? Since it installs locally with my Excel? Wrong. You could use this no matter where your data is. Your data could be in the cloud somewhere else, and you could still use JET installed locally on your Excel and connect to your data regardless of where it is. So I do want to ask one more poll question, and remember I told you I only had 4, so you know that we're getting almost all of them out of the way, and the last one's at the very end, so I won't be harassing you. I want to ask you this question. Have you heard rumors that Management Reporter, that's what MR is going away? I'm just curious about this. So if you could collect that. Okay. Wow, it started out, yes, big yes, and now it's just about 2/3 of the people have heard that and the others have not. So I want to dispel some rumors about that. So Management Reporter is technically not going away. Now I say technically, Microsoft has announced that it is going into maintenance only mode. So what does that mean? That means you still have years and years of usage available. If it follows suit like FRX, and there are still a lot of people using FRX, some of you may be using FRX, then you probably have about 10 more years you can get away with using Management Reporter. And that's a long time. But they're not going to be adding new features to it. They're only going to be working on bug fixes, any kind of bug fix they find. So it's still supported. It's still being reviewed. It's still being monitored for improvement. However, it is not going to have any new features to it. Now, what this means for you is you're in a really good situation. You do not have to rush out. You don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think, oh no, what am I going to do for my financial statements next month or even next year? You could take your time and evaluate things. And any financial reporting software company that tells you any differently is just trying to convince you to buy. So they're using fear tactics to try to get you to buy. So you don't have to rush out, take your time. And one of the things that we can do here is we can use the free version and explore and experiment with it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the product. So what I'm going to do is open up an Excel. And you can hear my dog barking in the background. My apologies for that. All right, there we go. So you could see Excel. You could see I have on my menu bar, JET is installed. And if I click on that ribbon, I can see the JET ribbon. And with the free version, this is exactly what you would see with the exception of, let me go up. With the exception of this little thing right here. And this is just telling me I have the paid version on here, but I'm simulating the free version. And so that's all that's telling me. But the rest is just like you would see Over here on the right side of the screen, this is where we connect to our data settings. And I have mine set up. Again, I have the professional version, the paid version. I have it set where I can connect to a lot of different data sources. But right now, I'm using data that's installed locally on my machine. So for any of you who are not using GP in the cloud, this is the same kind of scenario you would have where you would be connecting to data that's in your own network. And I could even see which company I have installed here. And if I click on the drop-down list, if I have multiple companies installed, I can see all of those companies all at the same time. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to start building out a very simple profit and loss statement. And what I like to do is and I don't know why I do this, consistency purposes, I don't know. But I always start in about like cell D9 or D10. And I want to get the account number from my general ledger. I want to get the description of the account. I want to have a month-to-date field, and I want to have a year-to-date field. So these are the columns that I'm going to be creating. And I'm going to highlight those columns, and on the Home tab, I'm just simply going to use some of the predefined formatting that comes with Excel, and I'm going to make those big there. Okay, cool. Got that done. And you know what? I'm also going to come in here on cell E4, and I'm going to type in profit and loss. That's the name of my statement. Profit and loss statement. And then I'm also going to put in like a date that I want to run this for. So I'm going to say I want this for 4/30/2017, which is the new date for the lesson company that comes with GP, the Fabricam company. I'm going to highlight those. And once again, I'm going to use those predefined formats to just go ahead and select these and maybe make them a little bigger. All right. And while I'm at it, let me center that. All right. So far, I haven't done anything outside of Excel. All of you know how to do exactly what I just did. And that's the beauty of JET, is I could take advantage of everything in Excel and everything I know about Excel to achieve my results. So the first thing I want to do is connect and get let's start with sales information. I want to get all of my sales accounts that are in my GP database. So what I'm going to do in this cell, and this is where I want to put it right under account here, I'm going to go up to the JET option on my menu, and I'm going to change the function. There's only 2 functions available in the free version, and most of my work will be done in the GL function. Sorry, it opened on another window. So here is the GL function wizard window, and all I need to do is start populating this window. So in the where, I'm going to tell it I want to get a list or rows. I want to create rows for all of my sales accounts. So I'm going to select rows. So the function is going to go and look for all of my sales accounts and create a row for each sales account. So I've got that I want to create rows. And in the what, it's saying, what do you want to create? And I just said, I want to create accounts. So I now have the main part of that set up. Now I need to tell it which accounts I want to be able to use. So I'm going to go into the account section, click on the drop down, and I'm actually looking at all of the account numbers that reside in my GP database. And I could select one. I could hold the shift key down and multi-select, or I could hold the control key down and select some that are out of range. Now, I don't want to select by account number. Instead, I'm going to come down here, and you notice I could also select by segments of my account. I'm going to choose categories. I am on a mission. I think it's time we start using categories. This provides us such a great opportunity for category usage. So I strongly encourage everyone to use categories. And let me show you what I mean by categories. So over on this monitor, I'm going to move it over. I have my account list. So you guys are familiar with this. This is the GP window that you see here. And if I pull up an account number, I have this whole drop-down list for category options. Oh, again, it opened on my other window. Let's stretch it over. So these are all of my categories, and I can add to that list if I want to, or even rename the list if I want to. So for example, Let me just bring GP over. I think that'll be easier. If I go into the financial area and I go into setup, there we go. I have this category option here, and I could change the name to any of these. So I'm just going to call this one cash, that first one. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I could add more if I want. Now, don't worry when you add more. You don't see the numbers. The numbers do exist. Don't worry about that. But you could add all that you want to add. So I'm going to go ahead and just close that out. Move GP back out of the way. And now let's go back to our categories. And now you'll notice immediately it accepted that change. I'm connected to GP, and it says, hey, so category 1 is now cash. So I'm going to scroll down and find my sales category, and I want to grab sales and sales returns and discounts, and I'm going to go ahead and insert those two. So now those two categories exist. So since they're in a range, their range is separated by 2 dots, and I'll go ahead and click OK, and you'll notice that I see the first account in my list. You'll also notice that now that I've used a JET function, I see a JET formula in cell A1. And JET uses column A and row 1 for formulas and functions. So a Belinda thing, I like to highlight those. That way I know those are hidden. And the word hide in there, it will indicate that those definitely are hidden. So that way I don't have to worry about seeing that. So those are hidden columns, and now I'm connected. If I click on this account number, I see the formula that the GL function created right across the top. So that's just a wizard to help me write the formula, so I don't have to think about, oh, how many commas do I want or what goes in which format. So now under JET, I'm under this mode area, I'm going to click on refresh. There are 3 modes: design, where you're writing; report, which will just show you the report without connecting back to GP; and refresh will go back to GP every time. And now I can see I have every account number that falls into those 2 categories. So those are all of my sales account category numbers. I'm going to go back to the design tab so I can work on writing. All right, so that was pretty cool. Let's add the account description. On account description, I'm going to click back on the GL function, and I'm going to then come in and tell it in the cell. So for every row that has an account number from GP, in the cell in column E, what do I want to display? I want it to display the account name. So I'm going to choose account name. And what account number do I want to use? I'm going to point back over here to cell D10. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to make sure that it stays absolute. It'll always be in column 10, but not, or column D, but not always row 10. So I'll make the column D absolute. Then I'll click OK. And now I can see the sales information. So now that I have that, if I were to go in and refresh again, I could see the account number and the sales. Now, I don't want to have to like expand those every time. So I'm going to go back into design mode. JET does something that's really cool. If I put the word fit in row 1, it will always do a best fit for me. So let me go back to the report mode and notice now how that stretches out for me. So I don't have to worry about always, is the column big enough to be seen and so forth. So now I'm going to connect to the numbers. So once again, I'm going to use that GL function. For financial statements, you're always going to use the GL function if you have the free version. And in the where, I'm going to choose cell once again. And in the what, I'm going to choose balance. Now, we've already used account name. If we were just doing this by category, we could list category name. But we could put in the balance from the GL, or we could put in a budget amount, also from the financial series. I'm going to choose balance, and now it says what account number do I want the balance for. So once again, I'm going to select column D, and here I definitely want to make sure I have column D selected because I could copy this function now, this formula. And now it's asking me, once I tab past that, it knows the account number, so it shortened this wizard up a lot. What's the start period and end period? Well, we know it's April 30th. So right now I'm just going to hard code it in. Now you can make your reports run a lot faster if you access the fiscal period inside of GP. And if you're on a calendar year, it should correspond. And it would be the year slash and the period. And whoops, wrong year. Not used to the new Fabricam. I'm going to show you how to make that easier for you shortly in just a few moments. But if you're on a fiscal year, then you could do a translation table somewhere so it knows period 1 is for April and so forth, so that you could still have the word April appear but know that that might be period 8, for example. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now I have my amount. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh my report. And now I can see my dollar amount. And now we have a couple things. One, we need to know we need to make that date where it's a little easier so I don't have to go and edit every individual formula every time I want to change the month. And the other thing is, you notice that these are showing up as negative because just like in FRX and Management Reporter, if it's a credit balance, it's showing up as negative. So we need to reverse the sign for credit balances. And I have a lot of zeros, so I'll probably want to deal with hiding any account with a zero balance. So those are 3 things we want to work on here. So I have my month to date number here. So let's fix that date so we don't have to manually key that in anymore. So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to hide column B. So I'm just going to type in the word hide in row 1 and column B. And now Jet will know I want to hide that column. And I'm going to use column B for formulas and functions that I want hidden, that I want to just use to help me generate my statements. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in the date that I want my report to print. All right, so now that I have my date there, I'm going to extract the fiscal year. So again, I'm on a calendar year, so I could just use the year function. And I'm going to do the same for the month. And again, if you're on a fiscal year that is not a calendar year, then there's some things we can do to offset that. Now that we have that done, let's come in and create what that fiscal period for month to date would look like. And for that, we're just going to use an Excel formula under text, and it's going to be the concatenate formula. So depending on the version you have of Excel, it could be concat or it can be concatenate. The newer versions of Excel use concat, but they're the same function. They work exactly the same way. All right, so the first thing I'll do is grab the year, and then I'm going to, in text 2, put a slash, and notice how it automatically put double quotes around it so that it's following, and I can see down here what it's going to end up looking like. And I'm going to put in the year. So now I have that done. Now, again, you can use the whole calendar date, but it will take longer. And the reason for that is if you use a whole calendar date in your formulas, like here in this month to date area, it's going to look at the detail account table. So it's going to look at every single transaction and add those up. If you use the fiscal period, it'll use the summary tables in your general ledger, which that means it'll run a lot faster. So you want to take advantage of that. Now that we have that one done, let's also create one for the first month of the year, just so that we have, when we do the year-to-date one, we'll already have that done. So I'm going to come into text again and choose concatenate. And once again, the year is there, and I'll do the slash. And now for the month is always going to be 1. Or I could use 0, because in GP land, 0 is beginning balance, and for a P&L statement, it would work the same. If you were doing this for a balance sheet, you definitely would want to have the 0 in front of it. All right, so now that we have that done, we could even change our title here so that this is, let me delete that this is a text. Let me use concatenate again, and we could say for the period ending space. And then in this field, we're going to come in and choose the date. Now you'll notice that the date, when I click OK, it's showing me as that serial number. So what I'm going to do is open that function back up, and I'm going to put another function inside, the one called text. And in the text now, I'm going to choose cell B4, and then a comma, and then in double quotes, I'll do month, month, / day, / year, end quote, end parentheses. And now, I'll send you a copy of these sample files if you guys are interested afterwards. So now I have got my nice little for ending period there. I've got all my periods here. So now I can fix my period here. And you can see almost I've only done 3 things really that are, well, 4, the fit, and then these 3 functions. Those are the only thing I've done that are really JET. Everything else I've done is Excel. So what I'm going to do is open up this JET function again, and I'm going to change the starting period to always look at cell B7. So I will press F4 to make that absolute. And the ending period will also be cell B7. And now I've set that up. So that was pretty cool. Now I want to deal with that negative, that reversing the sign. So all I have to do between the equal and the GL is put a minus sign. So now when you look at this formula, you can see I have minus GL, and then I have all of the other fields that were created as a result of that wizard. And once I get that done, the cell's now positive. I'm going to copy that over to the year-to-date, open the GL function back up, and now all I have to do is change the starting period. So the starting period is going to look at B8, and then I'm going to press F4 to make that absolute. So now it's looking at period 1 to period 4, and I'll click OK. I'm going to make both of these formatted as numbers, and now when I refresh my report, I have year-to-date numbers and month-to-date numbers all the way down the page. Now let's go back into design mode, doing a quick time check here, because I'm going to wrap this up in just a few moments. I'm going to come in and put in the word total, and I'm going to total this up. Now you notice that I left a blank here, and I'm going to just use Excel summing, and I'm summing up from this row to the blank row, because all of the rows I create in the middle or create using these functions are going to happen before the blank row. And if I include the blank row, then I will not see that, or will get all of the rows that get created. If I just do a sum of this row, it's always only going to sum row 10. So I wanted to sum row 10 and all of the other rows it creates. So I'm going to grab everything in between. I'm going to highlight that, choose Format Painter, and drag that across. All right, so now I have that done. Let's go back to JET and refresh. And now if I scroll down, I can see my grand total. All right, so this is all looking good. Go back to design. Very good. Now let's do just a couple more things, and then we're going to look at some different reports. I'm going to change this hide in B to hide plus question mark, and that's a JET function. And then if I type the word hide on a row, that row will be hidden. So if I were to go back and look at the report again, that blank row is now hidden because I put the word hide in column B. So what I would want to do to hide rows that have no transaction amounts is I would want to do an evaluation of whether or not this is a zero balance. So I would just use an Excel function called if. So that's under the logical function. And I'll say if this cell is equal to 0, actually, let me make it not equal to 0, method to my madness. If it's not, well, let me do it again, sorry. Lost my 10. Okay, if it's not equal to 0, then I want to show it. Otherwise, I'll hide it. Now, the word show doesn't really matter because it's only looking for the word hide. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And when I go back to JET, and I refresh my report, I only see rows that have a balance a month to date. Well, what if there's a year-to-date balance but not a month-to-date balance? So I need to account for that. So what I'm going to do is just nest the statement. So I'm going to cheat a little and copy everything but the equal sign, and I'll open that function back up, and I'm going to replace the hide with this that I pasted in my clipboard, and I'll change it to look at row 10. So now it's reading, let's go up here, if F10 is not 0, then show it. If it is 0, then is G10 0? If it is not 0, then show it, otherwise hide it. So now I've nested my functions. I'll click OK, and when I refresh again, now I see the row that has the year-to-date balance. Now, just a couple more things I want to show you. When you're in here, I go back to the jet function. I can tell it to look at a company, any company I want. So I have the capability of doing consolidated statements. If I had selected budget up here, I would have a budget option down at the bottom that I could have also included. And I can choose to include posted and unposted activity. Let me pull over a couple of reports that I've built, just so you can get a feel for what this looks like. So here is one that I've built, and this is a very similar one, and you can see I have that hide and show button. And in this one, I use the category, but I have the category over here. So I could quickly just change the category if I want to, which would change the amount. So that's something you could do. So notice if I change this to 32, oops, that is certainly not 32, it changes the name over here. So it makes it easy for me to edit the reports to work any way that I want them to work. Another one I want to show you, and here is one I built this morning. This is one of the ones I would show you. So I have sales, cost of goods sold, and expenses. Now this one I did something a little bit different. I used a GL function up here in the corner, and I said, instead of creating like sales or rows, I said create a separate sheet for segment 1. And this is a way I could do a departmental statement. Now what I needed to do here then is, if you were to highlight one of these functions here where we have the account number and click on GL, I said get the whole category, 31 through 33, whatever. But in segment 1, make sure it's showing me the segment from this function I added up here. And what this does for me, and don't worry, I know this is a lot to take in, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what's out there. When this one happens, which it does take a little bit longer, but you'll see why it takes longer, down at the bottom, I can look at the report separated by any of the segments that I want. Now, one of the things that I noticed, some of these, I need to add a function in there where if there's nothing that exists, then go ahead and have it populate properly. I don't have that one set up, but that's pretty cool that you could do that. So let me show you another way, another really cool thing you can do, because you're only limited by your imagination. So I built this one. This one does a cash analysis, and I built it using the exact same functionality that we just looked at. So when you run the report, so I'm going to go to Jet, and I'm going to tell it to refresh, and I have it automatically popping up this option. So I'm going to say run the report as of April 30th, 2027. Oop. Sorry, I did not put the format in. When you're in the free version, you have to put the slashes in. Okay, let me rerun the report. There we go. So now it's looking at my cash balance for every single day. It's showing me the cash change, and it's showing me with a visual representation which days had the biggest increase, which days had the biggest decrease, and I could even see all of those days mapped out on the side. So how did I do this? I'm going to go into the design mode, and you notice first of all, I've got all those show options here, just like we saw before. So we have show, And some of these, it's a little bit different. You know, it's based off of the date. If this date is, like, let me come in and change this date right here to the 15th. So we'll pretend I just ran this on the 15th. Then in this one, the date, the 16th, is higher, so I have it hiding that particular column. So that's how that works. And in this one, I'm using the full date. I'm not using the period, fiscal period, because I want to get the cash balance by day, by every single day. And then this column is nothing more than Excel formulas where I'm subtracting today's balance from yesterday's balance to get.
Belinda, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's just a question asking if you can zoom in a little bit so they can see a little better.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kara.
Perfect.
There. Okay, so this particular column is nothing more than taking today's balance minus or plus yesterday's balance, and then I created this chart based off of these, and I'll be glad to share this one with you guys as well. So, but this is just an interesting little way. I told it to go and get everything in category 1. So this is looking at all of my cash balances, and you're just basically limited only by your imagination. Now, keep in mind, I'd have to reverse the sign, but if I wanted to look at this for sales activity, and I think sales activity is 31, I believe. So I'm going to change this to sales activity, and I'm going to rerun the report, and we'll just pretend for a moment that it's, I have it reversing, so negative is a good thing here. It looks like my sales accounts only had changes on 2 days, and you notice I ran it as of the 15th, so I'm not seeing anything sooner, and I could see the trend for this one as well. And let me zoom in a little. So it's just a really clever way, I think, of accessing your data. You're really limited by your Excel imagination. Now, you could do more than just financial statements in here. So if I were to go to JET and I chose Table Builder, and let's see, I think oh, wrong one. There we go. I was trying to get my ribbon back, but that didn't work out for me. Then it'll open up a new Excel spreadsheet, and then it has this wizard that pops up, and I could select any view or any table inside the GP database. So basically, anything that's in your GP database can become accessible. And I could see views. For those of you who work in tables, I could see tables and even the number of records in those tables, or I could look at both together. I'm going to look for just payables transactions. So let me grab payables transactions. And now I could start populating this table that I want to use so I can add more data. So for example, I would want to get like the vendor ID. So I'll start typing vendor ID. Keeps me from having to keep scrolling up and down. And let me see if I can. Yeah, I could work this a little bit like this so you can get a feel. All right. So I got vendor ID, so I'm going to look for the vendor name. There's the vendor name. I could add the class and the vendor class, and I could keep going through and get the document number, and I want the document date. So, and I can just start looking for anything that I want to look for as we go along. So I have the document date. I want to get the current transaction amount. Now, I may not want anything that has a zero balance if I'm only wanting to look at people who owe me money. So in that case, I'll highlight the payables transaction table, and I could go ahead and add a filter in. And the filter that I would want to add, notice it doesn't even have to be a filter on a table that exists. This is similar to Smart List using the search function, although I'm not limited by 4, and I could do it for any table that is connected here. So I'm going to say where the current balance does not equal 0. So that's one. Ooh, you know what? While I'm here, let's also get rid of all those voids. So I'm going to go to voided, and I will choose equals no. And you know what? Let's also add class. Vendor class. I want to be able to tell it while I'm calculating it which class I want. So I'll use the asterisk and I'll make that user definable. And that's enough for right now. So I'm going to There you go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And it prompts me to save it. And it saves that so that I can like start over from this point. I'm not going to save that one right now, but it creates this little funky looking stuff here. But when I go back to Jet and I refresh, and there's my question, hey, do I want to have a vendor class added? I'll click on that. And now I have this whole table set up here. And from here, I can either under Table Tools choose Summarize with Pivot Table or Insert and choose Pivot Table. I can use all of this data for a pivot table using Excel. Now, a couple of examples of how and when you would want to do this. Let me open up this report that I built. So if I go to the Details tab, I see that table just like we were used to, we built while ago. And I'm using it to create this age trial balance. Then this age trial balance, I could go through and choose any vendor class that I want to choose and see who owes us money. Now this one's using a view that I built so that negative amounts are indeed showing up as negative. So I've dealt with that. But this is pretty cool that you could do this. So I love this feature. I think it's really cool. The table features are above and beyond what you could possibly imagine. There are so many things you can do with that. Another one of the things that I did is build a trial balance with that for the general ledger. I thought that was pretty clever. Here's another one I did, a payable historical analysis that reviews what's gone on in my payable so I could look at a given month for a given year for a given class and evaluate what's gone on, even opening it up and looking at the individual invoices. So you're pretty much just limited by your imagination as to what you can do and your Excel knowledge. So I wanted to kind of point some of those things out. Let's go back to the slide deck for a moment. Now for the financial statement, I know I went pretty quickly, and I know that there are some questions that you have. I did a whole series of videos for YouTube for Jet Reports, where side by side I build a report in Management Reporter and Jet Reports side by side so you could see the comparison. And there's an introduction report, there's building rows, building columns, building trees, and report definitions. And so you could kind of you could see how you do it in Management Reporter and you can compare it. Hey, Kara, so when you are working with customers, moving from Management Reporter to Jet, the tree structure is a little different. We saw where I created those additional sheets. That was one way, or we could have done columns as well. Are you finding that customers find it pretty easy to get used to the difference in the trees in Jet versus Management Reporter?
Yeah, absolutely. The feedback I've gotten on that is it's a lot more functional. They have more control of adding or removing things, and they just are saying that they find it easier to work with.
Cool. And are a lot of those customers then, they were using trees in Management Reporter?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's we're used to the different tabs anyhow. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's because I haven't used Management Reporter in a while. If you export something in Management Reporter with trees, it creates separate worksheets for you anyhow, right?
Right.
So it's pretty much the same thing then.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny when Microsoft worked with Jet to create and make this free version available and more robust, one of the things that I kept hearing, and even the Jet guy was saying, oh, we don't do trees. And I'm like, whoa, stop. After I learned it, I'm like, you do trees, you just do them differently.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. So let's move on to the next topic real quick, because I'm trying to leave some room for Q&A. What does Jet Reports cost? Well, there's 3 versions of Jet. What I've shown you so far is the free version. So free, nothing. Then there's 2 other versions, Professional and Enterprise. Now, before I talk about pricing on those, I do want to point out in that slide or in your GoToWebinar control panel, there's a handout section There are 3 handouts in there. One of them is the slide deck, but the other 2 come from Jet Reports itself. One is top 10 product frequently asked questions, and the other one is a product comparison, so you can see the difference between their products. And so I just downloaded those today, so feel free to grab those so you can see the difference between the products. But I do want to point out the free version is really robust in what it could do. The biggest differences that GP users are going to find is the drill down ability only works within the paid version, and multi-currency only works within the paid version. So let me open up, where did my table go here? And let me open up, we'll open up that simple one I created. All right, so I'm going to open this up, and forgive my Outlook, it does that most of the time because I have so many emails. Okay, so I'm going to go to edit workbook. All right, so I'm going to go to Jet for a moment. I'm going to change this so that I'm looking at the paid version. So I'm going to just go under app settings and tell it no simulation mode. Okay, so this is the way the paid version would be. So this is how refresh would work. I'm going to run this report, or drill down rather, how drill down would work. When I highlight one of these columns, I can click on that arrow and I see the drill down. Now, because I built this using that period, that fiscal period, if I scroll all the way to the right, I can see I'm looking at the summary table. So this is the summary of it. So if I highlight this again, I could double click on it and I can see all of the detail. Now, one of the things I love about this, and there's lots of fields in here, and if I scroll all the way to the right, I could see the table. One of the options was, is it posted or not? We can see that. But one of the things that I love about this is it has the originating information in. So if it came from receivables or payables, I can see the vendor or the customer. And if I only want to look at like Aaron Fitz, we love to pick on Aaron Fitz, first of all, I could just resort by the customer, but I could also choose the filter option and just select Aaron Fitz. So now I'm looking at the sales account, but just for what Aaron Fitz is working on. And I could even resort these if I want to by dragging and dropping them. So I can move them anywhere I want, so I can have them all to the end. And then I can export this as a separate report to Excel if I want to. So that's the drill down capability, and that's one of the things that the paid version has. And also multi-currency. You'd have to have the paid version for that. So pricing beyond the free version, well, I'm here today to talk about the free version, and they don't trust me with pricing. So that is a representation of me. So if you want pricing, you can add in the chat window, send me pricing, and I will make sure that you get pricing available to you. So, or that someone reaches out to you about that. But you could experiment on your own. I'm not encouraging you to spend money now. I'm encouraging you to explore the free version and get used to that and play with that. And that may be all you need. So as we move on to the final topic in our agendas, how will Jet benefit you? And there really are just a couple things where I know it benefits. One of the first things that all users do, and I know, Kara, you'll back. Well, Kara, let me ask. Well, it's on the screen now, so I guess it's kind of a giveaway. I was going to say, what's the first thing your users do when they calculate or calculate or generate a report and management report? Usually,
They usually export it to Excel.
they usually export it to Excel. So why not just start in Excel? And one of the things I've noticed is people have a comfort level in Excel, and it reduces the learning curve a lot. I noticed that over the years, if I'm doing something very simple in GP, a lot of times users will jump up and go, you take it and do it. But I could do something complicated in Excel, and if they think it's cool, they're like, ooh, show me. So I have a theory that anybody who thinks they could do file save thinks they're an Excel expert, so they automatically have this comfort level, and it reduces the learning curve. Again, Jet is more than just financials. That table builder in the free version can allow you to create all kinds of really cool pivot tables. Think smart lists, think Excel refreshable reports. That'll handle it just beautifully for you. And there are a lot of pre-built sample reports that are in the system. And I think I'll tell you how you can get those reports if you want to play with them a little bit. And you, especially because you could try it first and maybe even get away with using the free version. So Kara, what are some of the benefits from your GP users, or what are some of the benefits they're seeing using JET over MR?
A lot you've covered. That the comfort in Excel, it's just a lot easier. They can customize things easier. Like you said, smart list, refreshable smart list. They can put their smart list into Excel and continue to run the same report, day after day if they need to, without having to redo the whole thing.
Cool. Cool. And that's true of the ones using the free version, right?
Right.
Yep. Very nifty. Yeah, I love that table builder. I think it's pretty nifty. And I didn't even show you how cool it is if you save the XML, how you can pull it up and redo it. Love that. So if you want the sample files, the sample file is about 10 megabytes, so it's pretty big. So I didn't want to put it into the handout. So if you want it, just in the chat window, type the word samples. I'll look through and make sure that you get a copy of the samples. Make sure you could receive 10 megabytes. If you can't, let me know, and I'll try to put it in a place where you could download it from OneDrive, perhaps. So what I love about JET reports, well, I love Excel. So that's just me. That's my Excel artwork, by the way. So yeah, love Excel. So that's what I love. What's your favorite feature in JET, Kara?
I think probably the table builder or the drill down feature, and the customization. It's just fun to be able to create whatever kind of report you want.
Exactly. I love playing in Excel. So, and I had an aha moment. So, and this was early on as I was learning JET. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a trend report, where you have like a column for every month of the year, and then you have year to date. And I was thinking, oh, if I want to print this for July, I don't want August through December showing up. And I'm like, oh, how do I do that? And I thought, well, I know I would know how to do it in MR FRX. And then all of a sudden I was like, what? It's Excel. I know how to do it. It's the same way, right? So I know that it can be done because I've experienced that in MR and FRX. And now all I have to do is do an if statement. If the period hasn't happened yet, hide it. And I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. This is pretty easy. So there's a lot of really cool things like that out there. We do have a whole bunch of webinars coming up. The next webinar that we're having is toward the end of this month, and it's on optimizing JET. So it's not an entry one, but it's on how to make some of your JET reports run faster. I am just crazy enough that I sit down and time things. So I've got a few tips and tricks on how to make your JET reports run faster. And a lot of you have signed up. You saw the whole list, but we're adding one more. We're adding navigation lists by the lovely Miss Amber Bell. So if you're interested in attending any of these and you haven't done so already, you can also type invite me in the chat window and I'll make sure you get an invitation. All right, so before I start with the poll question, the last poll question, these are just some of the samples you're seeing pop up on the screen of all the different things you can do with JET reports, including building trial balances, including distribution reports. You get a whole variety of things with the use of Power, or with pivot tables and pivot charts and slicers and timelines. You could build some really cool dashboards utilizing those tables. I think that's pretty handy. Okay, great. Let me pull in that fourth question. There it is. And I think you know how to answer this question. Does JET reports do more than you thought? So I think you know how to answer that. Meanwhile, while you're answering that, and before I go to the P&L, I'm going to launch a really cool report from the professional version. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Nobody said no. You are a wonderful audience. Okay. So let's pull that up. And this is a trial balance, one of the sample reports JET gives away. This one does require the professional version. And when you run the report, and through my zooming, I kind of lost my reports up here. But when you run this report, and I'm going to refresh it for this data set, and let's see if I can zoom in a little. Okay, so I'm going to change this to be 2027, and I can have my start period. And you notice you could even have lookups for in the professional version, so you don't have to just manually enter things in. And the lookups, incidentally, in the professional version, you could use operators, so you could say it's less than, equal to, and so forth. So I'm going to click on Run Now, and we'll run this for January. And let's see. So this is a trial balance. So I'm looking at the summary numbers for each of these accounts on these days. And don't forget, because of the professional version, I have drill down capability as well. Now, when I click on the drill down here, because this is summary, I'm seeing it for each individual period, each account for each period. But once again, I can click and look at the detail. So you really are limited only by your imagination. And my dog just got so excited about it. He's just jumping with joy. So you can hear him in the background probably. So let me move on though. Are there any questions that any of you guys have? Any questions, any comments? What if, can it? I see a lot of you are interested in this sample question, so that's exciting. And oh, I'm super excited. I see on the list, so when I'm looking at the list of attendees, I see two really longtime customers of mine personally. Ben, it's great to see you. And one customer has been a customer so long he's become a dear friend, Adam. So that makes me happy seeing your name out there. Thanks for that. I feel like Romper Room, and I see Adam and I see Ben. Kara, what are some of the reasons that you're seeing GP users implement JET reports?
I think one of the big ones is the endless reporting options that JET can do. They're not limited, and you can build one report and use the same format for 15 other reports. Another big thing was the user doesn't need a login to GP.
Oh, yes.
So if you have somebody doing reports for you or something that they don't need access to GP, they don't need to be a GP user to have access to JET reports.
That is an awesome point, because you could, instead of giving someone a read-only capability, you could build a JET report for them to have access to.
And they can refresh it whenever they need it.
That's bravo point. And you could do that with the free version. You do have to set up security for them in SQL, but you could definitely do that for the free version. So that's pretty awesome. In the professional version, you can control by giving people viewer rights, so viewing capability. So I love that reason. I hadn't thought about that. That's really, really very, very smart. So yeah, one of the things that I'm super excited about is that people don't have to spend money to give it a try, especially with the sample reports. You could literally take the sample reports, install it. There's just a couple easy things to do if you're on premise, meaning your GP is in your own network. And within just a few minutes, you have reports that you could access. Then you could do like me and deconstruct them and figure out how did they do that. And I love deconstructing the reports. But I love that. I love that capability. If it's cloud, it's a little more complex, even with the a free version, because you have to have some of server components on there to enable you to get access to it over the internet. But I absolutely love that. So, and your users that you've moved over, they're happy with?
Oh, they love it. They love it.
Cool. Yeah, the learning curve over management reporter is definitely a big deal, don't you think?
I do, and I've had so much fun working with the different customers and the reports, and it's been awesome.
I love putting in, I'm going to go ahead and just pull one of these reports back up for just a moment. I don't know which one. We'll just use this one. I love being able to, let me get it's making me crazy. See the whole thing. There we go. Okay. I love being able to take advantage of, let me go to design for a moment. I'm going to just highlight this January one here. Being able to take advantage of Excel things like conditional formatting. So I'm going to just choose data bar here, and I'll choose the green one. We'll choose yellow. Why not? Okay, so I'm going to choose the data bar here. So when I go back into JET, and I'm just going to choose report so it'll run a little faster. Okay. All right, now I could see data bars for everything. And that wasn't a really good example, but a lot of these are negative, but because I have credit balances. But the ability to look at, do things like that conditional formatting within Excel, so I could see where my numbers are and how I should look at them. I think that's just incredible, because we're taking advantage of whatever they come up with in Excel. I love that. I love that feature. I'm still a fan. I want to ask you, Kara, I'm still a fan of partners helping their customers create views so that the data makes a little bit more sense. Have you implemented any views for your customers?
I have not yet. I haven't done that yet, but I know I think there is a couple coming soon.
Yeah, and one big reason is because you, especially if you're looking at payables and receivables, you want those credits, returns, and payments to show up as negative amounts instead of positive amounts. So that's one really big reason for it. It gives you some real flexibility on how you might look at your data. I
Yes.
think that's just pretty important. Although you can, if you're using, one of the things you could do if you're using a pivot table is you could say, only show me the invoices. And the assumption being that you have everything as applied as much as you possibly can. So I think that's a one way around it, but I certainly like being able to do that. All right, great. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so we are wrapped up our time. If you have any questions or comments, there's my email address. Please send them to me. Make sure that to reference the webinar so I know why you're asking me the question. And I'll be glad to help you with anything that I can. Yes, so, okay, so I will, a lot of you have asked for samples, so I will send you samples, the sample list out. It is 10 megabytes, so if you don't get it, maybe your spam or something blocked it, so reach out to me a second time. Make note of my number, actually, or my email address. Make sure you download the handouts in the email address. And then beyond that, I hope all of you guys have a great day and a great summer. And thank you so much for investing in yourself and learning today. Bye. Thank you, Kara, for your help.
Thanks, Belinda.
Okay.